the beginning of silence and comfort. The evening lights of Los Angeles were glowing like stars on Earth. It was not a normal night. The hall was filled with people from different places, each waiting for something they did not fully understand. Cameras were ready, but the mood in the room was not about fame or show. It was about quiet emotion. Sandra Bullock was there, sitting among familiar faces, but her heart was not steady. She had been carrying a weight for weeks. Even though she was known for her strength and laughter, life had tested her in ways that many could not see. Behind her smile, there was a silence, and behind her silence, there was a storm. Keanu Reeves walked into the hall with his usual calm. His presence did not need noise. People noticed him, but they noticed his peace even more than his face. He had a way of making space feel lighter, even when everything around was heavy. He saw Sandra sitting quietly, her eyes fixed on nothing, as if the world around her was far away. In the first few minutes, the audience noticed something unusual. Sandra, who was always the one to lift others, seemed lost in thought. She looked fragile, something rare for her. The whispers began. Why was she quiet tonight? What was troubling her? Then it happened. Without a word, Keanu walked closer. He did not make it dramatic. He did not seek attention. He simply leaned closer to her, just enough so she could feel that she was not alone. He spoke softly, almost like a whisper only meant for her heart. "You don't have to carry it all by yourself," he said. The words were simple, but they struck deep. Sandra felt her breath tremble. She had not expected comfort, especially not here, not in front of so many people. She felt a sudden warmth, a reminder that kindness could exist without being asked for. The audience could sense something had shifted. They did not hear every word, but they saw the way her eyes softened, the way her body seemed to relax as if a burden was being lifted. But what shocked everyone was not only the gesture itself. It was the way Keanu did it. He did not touch her hand. He did not put his arm around her, but the closeness carried more strength than any embrace. It was respect without pressure, comfort without demand, kindness without pride. This was not about actors or fame. This was about two people showing what humanity looks like when it is real. The silence in the hall grew deeper. Even the sound of cameras clicking slowed down. The audience was drawn into that moment, as if they were witnessing something sacred. But within that quiet moment, there was also suspense. What was Sandra carrying that made her look so fragile? What had Keanu seen in her that others had missed? The questions filled the minds of everyone watching. Slowly, Sandra leaned back toward him, not with dramatic movement, but with quiet trust. It was a gesture that said she felt safe, that she could allow herself to breathe again. The world outside might not know the full story yet, but in that hall, everyone felt it. They saw a spark of respect, a reminder that even the strongest among us sometimes need a gentle voice beside them. This was only the beginning. What the audience did not know was that this small act of comfort would open doors to hidden struggles, untold stories, and unexpected turns that would test not only Sandra and Keanu, but everyone connected to them. The night had started as a simple gathering. It was about to become something much more. The weight behind the smile. The hall was still filled with silence after Keanu leaned closer to Sandra. People tried to go back to their own conversations, but they could not. They had seen something raw, something human. It was not a scene from a movie. It was real life. Sandra sat quietly, her eyes moist but not yet tears. Her mind replayed his words again and again. "You don't have to carry it all by yourself." Such a simple line, yet it felt like it had reached the deepest part of her. She realized how long she had been pretending that everything was fine, even when inside she felt broken. Keanu stayed beside her. He did not speak much, and that was what made it powerful. Sometimes silence gives more comfort than endless words. The audience noticed that he did not shift his attention to the cameras or the crowd or even to himself. All his focus was on Sandra. It was respect in its purest form, but there was a reason behind Sandra's quiet pain. Only a few close to her knew. She had recently gone through days of loss and sleepless nights. A close friend she had grown up with was gone, leaving her with memories that weighed heavy. She had chosen not to speak about it publicly. She had kept her pain private, but grief has its own way of showing, even when you try to hide it. As the event moved forward, speeches were made on stage, lights shone brightly, but the audience's attention kept returning to the corner where Sandra and Keanu sat. Every small glance, every gentle gesture between them carried more emotion than anything happening on stage. Sandra leaned a little closer, almost without realizing. It was not about love in a romantic way. It was about trust, about someone finally allowing herself to be vulnerable. People in the room felt something they could not put into words. They saw humility in action, the kind that makes even the strongest hearts soften. Yet not everyone in the hall understood. A few whispered, "Why is she emotional tonight? What happened?" Others speculated, creating stories of their own. But Keanu did not care about the noise. He kept his calm presence steady beside her, shielding her not with walls, but with kindness. There was one particular moment that shocked the audience again. Sandra, who had kept her emotions guarded for so long, let out a small shaky breath. It was not loud, but it was real. Keanu looked at her, and instead of asking questions, he simply gave a small nod as if saying, "I hear you even when you don't speak." Tears finally touched the edge of her eyes, and she tried to hide them quickly. But Keanu whispered, "It's all right. People will not remember the tears. They will remember your strength." This line settled deep not only in Sandra's heart, but also in the hearts of those who were close enough to hear. The audience, without meaning to, leaned in as if they were all part of the moment. Many of them felt their own memories rising, memories of times when they had wished someone would simply sit beside them, without judgment, without noise. But in the middle of all this comfort, a new layer of suspense was building. Sandra knew that sooner or later her hidden story would come out. The pain she had kept private would no longer stay only hers. People would ask, people would wonder, and people would want answers. Keanu seemed to sense this as well. He knew the road ahead for her would not be easy. But in that moment, his quiet comfort became a promise. No matter what the world demanded, she would not face it alone. The night moved on. Yet it no longer felt like a normal evening. Something inside the hall had shifted. Respect had filled the air. Humility had become louder than any speech. Kindness had become the spotlight everyone noticed. And yet, behind all the quiet strength, a storm was waiting. A storm that would test not just Sandra's resilience, but also Keanu's ability to carry the weight of someone else's pain while still holding on to his own scars. This was only the second step of the journey. What began with comfort would soon unfold into deeper truths, unexpected twists and moments that no one in the hall, or even the world outside, was prepared for. The hidden storm, the night after the event. Sandra sat alone in her home. The city outside was alive with sound, but inside her house there was only silence. She looked at the table where the invitation card from the evening still lay. Her fingers touched it slowly, and her eyes filled again with the same tears she had held back in public. She remembered the way Keanu had leaned closer. She remembered his calm voice, his gentle words. In those few seconds, she had felt seen, something she had not felt in a long time. But now, alone in the quiet of her home, the storm inside her heart returned. Grief was not something she could escape. It came in waves, and when it hit, it left her trembling. The memory of her lost friend returned again and again. The laughter they had once shared now echoed like a ghost. Keanu, meanwhile, sat in his own apartment not far away. He stared out of the window, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. He had known pain himself, loss that had scarred him deeply. He understood what Sandra was carrying, even though she had not spoken about it directly. He knew the silence of grief, the heavy weight of pretending to be fine when inside your world is breaking. The next morning, Sandra received a message. It was from Keanu. Simple words, but powerful. "Breakfast? No cameras. Just peace," she hesitated. Part of her wanted to stay in the safety of her house, hidden away from the world. But another part of her knew that if she stayed alone too long, the pain would only grow stronger. She agreed. They met at a small cafe far from the busy streets. It was quiet, the kind of place where no one bothered them. Sandra walked in, her eyes tired but grateful. Keanu was already there, waiting with 2 cups of coffee. "You came," he said softly. "I almost didn't," she admitted, sitting down. "But then I remembered your words." Their conversation was not loud. It did not need to be. Keanu listened more than he spoke. Sandra found herself sharing things she had not told anyone else. She spoke of her friend, of the sudden loss, of the way it felt like a part of her past had been taken away forever. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but Keanu did not interrupt. When she paused, he gave her space. When she cried, he handed her a napkin. Not to silence her, but to let her know it was all right to cry. "Grief is not weakness," he finally said. "It's proof that you loved deeply. The pain only shows the strength of the bond you had." Sandra looked at him, her eyes red from tears. "But what do I do with this pain? It feels endless." Keanu leaned forward, his tone steady. "You carry it, but you don't carry it alone. Sometimes sharing it makes the weight a little lighter." At that moment, Sandra realized something. His comfort was not just about words. It was about presence. It was about knowing that someone was willing to sit with you in your darkest hours without asking you to be strong all the time. But outside that cafe, the world was still watching. Rumors had already started to spread after the event. Photos of Sandra leaning closer to Keanu had filled social media. Some praised the kindness they saw, while others twisted the story into gossip. Sandra knew the noise would only grow louder. But she also knew that what she had found in Keanu was real, something deeper than public opinion. Still, a question burned inside her. How long could she keep her private pain hidden when the world was hungry for answers? Keanu noticed her silence as she stirred her coffee. "The world will always talk," he said gently. "But remember, truth is not always what they say. It's what you know inside yourself." For the first time in weeks, Sandra felt her breathing slow. The storm was still inside her, but it no longer felt like it would drown her. Yet both of them knew this was not the end. The road ahead would be filled with more eyes, more whispers, and more tests of strength. The comfort they shared would soon be challenged in ways neither of them could imagine. When the world begins to speak, the morning after their quiet breakfast, the calm they felt began to fade. The world outside had not stayed silent. Headlines appeared across websites, whispers filled social media, and images from the event were now everywhere. Pictures of Sandra leaning closer to Keanu were posted with captions that twisted the truth. Some said it was a sign of secret love. Others claimed it was a staged moment for attention. Few spoke of the real truth, that it was kindness, nothing more, nothing less. Sandra sat in her living room scrolling through the noise. Her heart grew heavier with each headline. She had wanted to keep her grief private, but now strangers were turning her quiet vulnerability into gossip. Her phone rang. It was a close friend from the industry. "Sandra, are you all right? The media is going wild. They're asking for interviews. They want statements." She sighed, pressing her hand against her forehead. "I just wanted one moment of peace." "Is that too much?" The friend paused, then said gently, "You know how the world works. But don't forget, people also saw the kindness. Not everyone will twist it." Meanwhile, Keanu read the same headlines. But instead of anger, he felt sadness for Sandra. He knew she had been carrying pain already, and now this storm of public attention was only making it harder. He called her later that day. His voice was calm, steady as always. "Ignore the noise. Let them speak. You don't have to explain what they don't understand." "But what if they don't stop?" she asked quietly. "Then we don't stop either," he replied. "We keep walking. Respect will always outlive gossip." That night, they both attended another charity event. The hall was brighter, the cameras louder. People stared as they walked in. Whispers followed them like shadows. Sandra felt the weight of every eye on her. She wanted to disappear, but Keanu noticed her unease. Without hesitation, he walked a little closer, not dramatically, but enough to remind her she was not alone. On stage, speeches were made again about hope, resilience, and giving back. But the audience was distracted. They were watching Sandra and Keanu. Every small gesture became a story. When he poured her a glass of water, cameras clicked. When she smiled faintly at his words, flashes lit the room. But then something happened that changed the air completely. During a speech about helping the less fortunate, a young girl walked onto the stage. She was no more than 12 years old. Her clothes were simple. Her hands held a small letter. She had come from a shelter that the charity supported. Her voice trembled as she read from the letter. "Thank you. Because of your kindness, I have food, I have books, and I have hope." Her eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of grief. They were tears of gratitude. The room fell into silence, just like the night before when Keanu leaned closer to Sandra. Sandra's heart broke open in that moment. She saw herself in the young girl, someone carrying pain but still holding hope. Her own grief felt heavy, but now she realized something. If this little girl could stand in front of hundreds of strangers and speak with such courage, then maybe she could find her own courage too. The audience watched as Sandra stood up, slowly walking toward the stage. Her steps were quiet, but her presence carried weight. She hugged the girl gently, whispering something only she could hear. The cameras captured the image, but for once, no one twisted it. The room filled with applause, not for fame, but for humanity. Keanu stood at the side, watching. He did not move forward because he knew this moment belonged to Sandra. His comfort had helped her stand, but now she was showing her own strength. And yet, even in that powerful moment, the storm of the outside world was not gone. Applause would fade, but questions would return. Gossip would rise again. Still, something inside Sandra had shifted. She was no longer only the one receiving comfort. She was beginning to find the strength to give comfort again. But both she and Keanu knew the hardest test was still waiting. A truth buried deep in Sandra's past was about to come forward, and when it did, it would either break her completely or set her free. The truth begins to rise. The applause from the charity night still echoed in Sandra's memory when she woke up the next morning. She had hugged that little girl with all the love she had, and for the first time in weeks she felt a small spark of strength return to her. But the calm did not last long. Her phone buzzed again and again. Messages, calls, and endless notifications. The world was now demanding answers. News channels were running endless debates. Some praised her for showing kindness, but others demanded to know what pain she was hiding. Sandra felt trapped. She had always kept her personal struggles private. Her career had taught her that the world loves stories, but it does not always love truth. Still, she knew she could not hide forever. She sat by the window staring at the morning light when Keanu called. His voice was steady, as always. "You don't have to answer them," he said softly. "But maybe I should," she whispered. "Maybe they need to hear the truth, not rumors." Keanu paused. "Then when you're ready, speak. Not because they demand it, but because you choose it." His words stayed in her mind. Choice. That was what mattered. Later that day, Sandra met with a small circle of friends she trusted. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "I lost my friend, someone I grew up with. She was like family to me, and I kept it silent because I didn't want the world to turn my grief into a headline. But it happened anyway." There was silence in the room. One of her friends touched her hand gently. "Maybe sharing your story will help others who are carrying the same kind of loss. Maybe your voice will give them strength." Those words struck her deeply. Perhaps the very thing she was afraid of, speaking about her grief, was what could turn her pain into hope for others. That night, she made a decision. She would speak, but not through gossip magazines, not through staged interviews. She would speak in her own way, with her own voice. Keanu stood beside her as she planned. He did not push, he did not direct. He simply offered his presence. "Whatever you say, let it come from your heart," he told her. Days later, at another charity event, Sandra stood on stage. The lights were bright, the cameras waiting, but this time she was not afraid. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling but clear. "Many of you have seen pictures of me, and you've made stories about them. But here's the truth. I lost someone close to me, someone who shaped who I am. Grief has been heavy, and I tried to carry it alone. But I learned that sometimes you need to lean on others. Sometimes you need to allow kindness to reach you. The room fell silent. Not a whisper, not a sound. Even the cameras seemed to pause. Sandra continued, her voice growing steadier. When you see someone leaning closer, don't assume it's weakness. Sometimes it is courage. Sometimes it is the first step toward healing. As her words filled the hall, people felt a deep shift inside them. Some wiped their eyes quietly. Others nodded, thinking of their own hidden grief. Keanu stood at the side, his eyes soft. He knew this was Sandra's moment, but he also knew that the path ahead would still be hard. The world might applaud now, but the world also forgets quickly. She would still need strength tomorrow and the next day, and the next. But in that hall, respect filled the air again. People were not looking at celebrities anymore. They were looking at two human beings, carrying pain and giving comfort. Yet just as Sandra began to feel lighter, another shadow was moving closer. A journalist had discovered more about her private life. Hidden letters, past struggles, and unspoken wounds were now in danger of being revealed to the world without her permission. The storm she thought she had faced was only the beginning. The unspoken past revealed. The silence after Sandra's speech stayed in the hearts of many people. It was powerful, raw, and unforgettable. But the peace she felt that night lasted only for a short while. The next morning, newspapers and online sites carried not only her speech, but something more. A journalist had dug deep into her past. Private letters between her and her late friend had been leaked. Words that were never meant for the world were now out in the open. Sandra sat at her kitchen table, holding the paper in her hands. Her chest tightened as she read lines she had written years ago in moments of pain and hope. Now those lines were twisted into stories she never wanted told. Her phone buzzed again and again. People sent her messages, some supportive, some filled with judgment. Her grief was no longer just hers. It had been taken, turned into headlines. She felt her hands shake. Why can't they just let me mourn? She whispered to herself. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. When she opened it, Keanu was there. His eyes, calm but firm, met hers. Without a word, he stepped inside and sat with her. He saw the paper on the table and the pain in her face. "They took it too far," he said softly. "They took my memories," she replied, her voice breaking. "Those words were mine. They belonged to me and to her. Now the world is pulling them apart." Keanu listened, letting her anger spill out. When she fell into silence, he spoke gently. "You can't control what they publish, but you can control how you face it. You can turn what they stole into something that belongs to you again." Sandra looked at him, tears running down her cheeks. "How do I do that?" "By speaking before they do," he said. "By telling your story your way. When truth comes from your own heart, no one can twist it." She wanted to believe him, but doubt filled her. Would the world even listen? Or would they continue to gossip, to pick apart her pain like it was entertainment? Later that night, the two of them walked through a quiet park to escape the noise. The sky was dark, but the stars were bright. Sandra spoke softly. "What if people only see weakness in me?" Keanu stopped walking and turned to her. "Then let them. Strength is not about looking untouchable. Strength is about standing even when the world wants to push you down. And you are still standing." His words wrapped around her like a shield. For the first time that day, she felt her breath steady. The next day, she made a bold choice. Instead of hiding, she asked to speak live on a small broadcast connected to the charity. Not a press conference, not a staged interview, just her voice, raw and real. She looked into the camera, her eyes still heavy but steady. "Yes, those letters are mine. They were written to a friend who is no longer here. They hold memories of love, of pain, of hope. I never wanted them to be public, but now that they are, I want to tell you what they really mean. They are not weakness. They are proof that I loved deeply. They are proof that I felt pain and kept going. They are proof that being human is not something to be ashamed of." The broadcast lasted only a few minutes, but its effect was powerful. Thousands of people shared it. Many said her honesty gave them courage to face their own hidden grief. In the crowd, some still whispered, some still judged. But more than ever, respect filled the air again. Keanu stood quietly at her side after the broadcast, not taking the spotlight, not speaking over her. His gentle comfort was there, just as it had been on that first night. Yet even as the storm seemed to calm, Sandra knew her journey was not over. She had faced loss, she had faced gossip, and now she had faced exposure. But something even harder was waiting, the question of how to heal, not just survive, and healing would demand more than speeches. It would demand courage, patience, and the strength to let kindness change her life completely. The path toward healing, the days after Sandra's broadcast, were filled with mixed voices. Some praised her for her honesty. Others continued their gossip. But something important had shifted. She was no longer silent. She had chosen her voice, and that choice gave her back some of the control she had lost. Still, healing was not easy. Grief did not vanish after one speech. The pain remained, appearing in waves, sometimes strong enough to bring tears without warning. But this time she was not alone. Keanu was there, quiet but steady. He often reminded her of small things. "Breathe," he would say when she looked overwhelmed. "Rest," he would whisper when she tried to push herself too hard. He did not try to fix everything. He simply stayed beside her, letting his presence be the comfort she needed. One afternoon, they visited the same shelter where the young girl had read her letter weeks earlier. The children ran toward Sandra and Keanu with smiles that carried pure innocence. Sandra felt warmth rise in her heart as she listened to their laughter. A little boy tugged at her hand and asked, "Are you sad today?" She knelt down and smiled softly. "A little, yes, but being here makes me less sad." The boy thought for a moment, then said, "Then come here more. We will help you smile." His words struck her deeply. Healing was not only about speaking her truth, it was also about receiving love from unexpected places. These children, with their small hands and big hearts, reminded her that kindness flows both ways. Later, as the sun set outside the shelter, Sandra and Keanu sat on the steps. The orange glow of the evening wrapped around them. "It still hurts," she admitted quietly. "It always will," Keanu replied. "Loss never leaves, but pain can live beside hope. They don't cancel each other." She looked at him, her eyes soft but filled with new strength. "Then maybe that is what healing is, not forgetting, but learning to carry both." He nodded gently. "Yes, and when you carry both, you find balance." Their silence afterward was not heavy this time. It was peaceful. Weeks passed, and Sandra slowly returned to her work, but she carried herself differently now. She no longer wore a mask of forced strength. Instead, she walked with quiet honesty, showing that it was possible to grieve and still give love to the world. The world noticed the change. People began to speak less about the gossip and more about her courage. Interviews shifted from rumors to admiration. Many wrote letters thanking her for helping them face their own grief, but the most powerful change was inside her. She no longer felt ashamed of her tears. She no longer hid her pain. She let it be part of her story, and by doing so, she discovered freedom. On one calm evening, she and Keanu sat again in the same hall where it all began. No cameras, no crowd, just the two of them. "That night when you leaned closer," she said softly, "everything changed. I thought I was going to break in front of everyone, but your comfort reminded me I could still stand." Keanu gave his quiet smile, the same one people around the world had come to know. Sometimes all it takes is to be near someone, not to fix them, but to remind them they are not alone. She placed her hand over his gently, not as a gesture for the world to see, but as a quiet thank you. And in that moment, the journey felt complete. The grief was still there, but it no longer defined her. The kindness she received had become the kindness she could give. The story that began with a simple gesture. A man leaning closer, Offering quiet comfort had become a story of resilience, of respect, of humility, and of the power of kindness to heal even the deepest wounds. And as the night grew quiet, one truth remained clear. Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion create the biggest changes, not just in one life, but in everyone who witnesses them.